I used to like it when I would lose my voice a little bit. I would try to sing and see if it sound better.
Because it's all like sexy. Yeah.
Yeah. You're listening to the Raw Honeys podcast, the place for women who crave connection. Join Chelsea Fine, Heather Hildenbrand, and me, Amanda Axel. We're real friends who aren't afraid to talk about the raw truth of real life. If you're looking for a group of girlfriends who will support and encourage you when the going gets tough, this is the place to be. Pull up a chair, grab a cup of coffee or a glass of wine, and enjoy the show. We're going to talk about grief today. And the reason we wanted to talk about this today is because I recently experienced the death of a very close loved one. My dog, who you guys have heard about on the show, passed away a couple weeks ago. And she was sick, and she went very peacefully, and she was 13 and a half. So we have no regrets about, her life or her death or anything. But, when I got her, when she was a puppy, like I was in love with her within majorly in love with her within days.
Love at first sight. Yeah.
Love at first sight. Oh my
Puppy
God.
love.
She would not stop crying, this freaking dog. I don't really know why I took her home.
Like whimpering kind of crying?
Yeah, she was like, she sounded like a little monkey,
Little chitters, yeah.
The whole night, it was insane. The next morning, I was like, what the hell did I get myself into? But on the days that followed, I just fell majorly in love with her, and I just wanted to take care of her the way I would take care of a child. I just became a mother to her automatically, more than, just a dog owner, but I really became her mother. And I knew, this is when I knew, because I remember I was sitting on the couch watching American Idol. This is 2006. And she was sleeping, and I picked her up, and she didn't wake up right away, and her body flopped over to the side.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought she was dead, Oh
no.
And I I gave her a little shake,
Yeah.
And so she woke up, and I was like, oh my God. I'm my mom was like, oh my God, Mom, I thought she was dead because she just flopped over. Are you okay? I'm like, are you okay, Lonnie? I'm like, she's fine. She was just asleep,
Yeah, sleeping hard.
She was sleeping hard, man. But I knew in that moment, because I thought I had lost her, and I'd only had her a very short time, But I knew that when the day came that I would lose her, which I knew eventually would come, that it would be absolutely devastating. Yeah. And the older she got, the more real it became, and the more I would be worried. I'd wake up in the morning and I'd call her name, and if she didn't wake up right away, I'd give her a little shake, just that same time, and I'd be like, yeah. And then she'd wake up and she'd be like, what? And I'd be like, don't scare Mommy like that.
Right?
Because after a certain age, you're like, oh my gosh, it could happen anytime,
Yeah.
But anyway, that's all just to say that, losing her has been very, very hard, for both me and my husband. And I'm so glad that I have my husband right now, because he's the only person in the world who knows what I'm going through and who loved her as much as I loved her, and knows how, I know you guys know how special she is. And I love you guys for that. She really is a special dog. She had so many, relationships with other people, personal relationships that were outside our family, with you guys, and with Heather's family and stuff,
Yeah.
And that's, just really a special thing. So,
very special.
Since this is all kind of coming up, I was just thinking about, how hard it is to know how to support your friend when they're grieving, Yeah. I've been through my own losses in my past. You guys have too. We've talked about them on the show before, really significant losses. But it's just really interesting, even going through those, those really personal losses, when our friend is going through that again, it's, you sort of don't know, at least I don't really know exactly the right way to respond, because there's things you want to say, there's things you want to do, but you don't know if they're the right things to say. You don't know if they're the right things to do. and you don't want to do anything because you don't want to seem insensitive, you know? So I really wanted to tackle that today because all of us experience grief at one point or another, and we all want to be really good friends. And so I wanted to talk about how we can best support our friends who are grieving. And so I just wanted to, start off by asking you guys, maybe we'll start with Heather. Why do you think it's so difficult to support our friends who are grieving?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think probably the most logical is because everybody grieves differently. And so you have no idea if the person that you're trying to comfort or be there for or show up for is going to receive whatever you're giving. You have no idea. And you also know that they're a lot more sensitive than they normally are in that moment. So if they don't receive it well, then they might receive it really, really badly. You know what I mean? Right. It's like, there's no in between. There's like either, oh, thank goodness I said the right thing, or, oh shit, I definitely just said the complete wrong thing. And now I made it worse, And so there's a fear of that, probably a fear of somehow making it worse.
Like it's a landmine a little bit.
It is a little bit, because even if it's someone you really care about or someone who knows how you feel about them, it is easy when you're the griever. It's easy to take something somebody says wrong or too, emotional or.
Yeah, definitely.
So we're just always kind of afraid of that. We don't want to hurt. We don't want to make the hurt worse.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I think a lot of times people probably don't show up well because they don't know how to show up. I think, Amanda, you and I were talking about this after right after Lonnie passed. And I think you had said something about it too, about, I don't know. I'd said something to you and we got on this conversation about how everybody responded differently to you in this time. And friends that you had that you thought you considered really, really good friends didn't really reach out right away. And you were surprised by that at first. And then you said you looked deeper to try to figure out why they didn't, right? Which most people probably don't look deeper to figure out why somebody wouldn't reach out. And I think it's probably just because we get our feelings hurt so easily in that time.
Yeah. Well, and grief is so rare, or hopefully grief is so rare that it's not like something that a lot of friendships actually get to practice, because if you think about it, in friendship, a lot of times we get to practice, we get to learn how best to support, our friend, and regardless of the circumstance. But grief it's so intense, and it's so, there's like a helplessness connected to that feeling of grief, and it doesn't happen very often. So there aren't very many opportunities to know how to support your friend best, or to learn how to support your friend best. And also, we ourselves don't always know our own grieving process. So if it's, if we are the ones grieving, we can't even predict what we're going to want or need in any given moment, which, can make it extra difficult for people trying to love on us and support us. It's like everybody trying to speak like a mutual language that nobody quite knows fluently,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. A lot can go wrong though. And it's so sensitive. You're right. So sensitive.
Yeah. Well, and it is rare, so you don't get to practice, but even more than that, I think every grieving experience is different.
Yeah.
Because we were talking about this a little bit too, that, everyone's going to lose someone in their life, and not just one someone, but multiple someones in some way. And it doesn't even, like, every circumstance is different. It could be death. It could be a different way you've lost someone. And each one, because of their place in your life and because of who you are when you lose them, is going to give you a different grieving response too. So how you felt when you lost, like Amanda, we were talking about this, how you felt when you lost your dad is different than how you felt when you lost Lonnie. And not just because they are different people in your life, but you're at a different part of your life where you grieve differently. And so you can't even predict how you're going to grieve. Like you said, Chelsea, you don't even know how to prepare people, You really just can't really imagine how you'll feel until you're in it. And by then it's like communicating what you want or need is kind of like a really hard thing to do in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Well, and it can change, it can change just like that, what you want or need. So yeah, it is a little bit like a minefield for both parties, for both people in the friendship.
I know we're talking about how unique every grieving experience is. But, in general, how do you guys typically want to be or need to be supported when you're in the middle of something like that?
That's a good question. Do you know, Heather? Do you know?
When I can think back, to when I've been through something like that, some kind of loss, the best sense of support that I ever get from friends is when they say, I don't really know how to fully help you right now. So, I'm here for whatever you need.
Yeah.
And it's that verbalization of like, hey, I'm right here. I'm going to be back here. If you want me to be up there with you, just ask. If you want me to be over here, you just ask. Like putting the ball in my court.
Yeah. Available, being available.
And being available is nice because the flip side is when people think that they do know and then they, I get a sense of comfort out of grief and hard situations when I can see that I'm still in control of some part of myself. Like so a time in grief when I reacted really, really negatively to somebody who was trying to help was when they tried to come in and without asking permission, take over and like take my kids. I'm going to take your kids. I'm going to take them to my house. You don't need this right now. They're going to be with me. Nope. Actually, I need to still feel like my kids are with me. I need to still feel the comfort of that. I need to still feel the comfort of being in control as a mom. If they had asked me, it would probably have gone a lot differently. It was more like, I'm going to come in here and just make this decision for you. And it hit me so wrong because it was just this like bulldozing thing. And I think it also just kind of took away my little bit of control that they didn't give me the choice. And so it went really badly.
Well, yeah. I mean, and their intention, I'm sure, was, the opposite of that because other people, I'm sure really want someone to come in and take control.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. Because that control, I mean, it's the only stability you kind of have when you're grieving. There aren't a lot of anchors that you can kind of hold on to inside yourself. But some of those like built-in anchors are things like cleaning your kitchen, watching your kids. Like those are those mundane tasks or, just pieces of our lives that are kind of routine. And I can see that. Yeah. They provide comfort and they kind of give you like a sense of motion, like things are moving, even if it feels like you're stuck in this sad place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think just when it's gone the best is when I get those open-ended either words of comfort or just offerings of, hey, what would make you feel the most comforted right now? And leaving the open-ended question on me. And then if I don't have the bandwidth to even answer, I can say that, because I'm assertive enough. I can usually tell people like, I don't want to talk right now, or I do want to. And when people are grieving, they will tell you, like Amanda, when we went through this too, where she said, on this day we talked on the phone. And then the next day she didn't want to talk to anybody. She just didn't want to talk. And she had to tell people, I don't want to talk today. And it's like, when you're in it, you don't usually have a problem telling people, I don't want to talk to you right now.
You really don't. You really don't give a shit about what anyone else is like.
And maybe that's like a good, important thing to take away then is just, if you are somebody who is supporting a grieving friend or has in the past or know you will in the future, is just like one good bit to take away is that person grieving, no matter their personality, typically is going to be pretty good at asserting themselves and what they do need. So you can leave it up to them. They are not incapable anymore of doing the things that will comfort them, and so we can kind of put the ball in their court for that.
Yeah. And I think too, for that, when you are supporting someone who's grieving, you have to not be too sensitive to any of their reactions as well. Meaning like not being defensive or not taking things the wrong way, because like Heather's saying, like, regardless of their personality, they're in it. And so their reactions may not be their normal reactions. Yeah. And so we have to be, aware of that too, I think.
Yeah. And just, right. Like, it's not about you. Just know that it's whatever it is, it's not about you.
It's not about you. Yes.
Well, and sometimes them, someone asserting themselves or just even expressing themselves, because a lot of times people, their emotional control is not always targeted or channeled, in any one specific direction. But sometimes letting somebody kind of be a little crazy or be a little mean or snap at you and stuff, sometimes that's, that means that you're kind of a safe place for that person. They're not afraid to kind of snap at you. And my sister, my sister's husband, he passed away from cancer 2 years ago. And that was a really hard, sad, and heavy, 6 months that he was sick before he passed away. And I remember I was driving her home one night, late at night, and I said something to her. We weren't even fighting. It wasn't even a petty thing that I said. I just said something kind of normal. And she sort of snapped back, and then she just kept kind of snapping and yelling. And then, she got louder, and then she started saying things that, had nothing to do with me. They were, she was expressing her pain and she was expressing her fears and stuff, but we were in a enclosed space in the car, and I'm her sister, and it was safe, and she could just like lose her mind.
Yeah.
And get really angry, and feel those things in an environment where she was safe, and where there wasn't going to be any repercussions on her. And, so sometimes that's like a really good gift, I think, that we can give our friends, is to kind of let them fall apart in front of us, or let them channel whatever they need to in our direction, especially with grief, because you just feel so like rudderless,
Yeah.
So how do you feel like you need to be supported when you're grieving, Chelsea?
I mean, I know that I like to be touched. I really like physical touch. I like hugs, and I like holding hands. And really what I want anytime I've experienced anything, like a real grief, is my gut instinct desire is like, I want to like dogpile with all the people I love. Like, I just want to like burrow down into like a pile of people, and just be surrounded by that. Practically speaking, that's not always, that's not always an option. But I do like physical touch, and, I don't really know. I definitely like words. I don't actually know. And this is a good question, because it's something I do want to pay attention to in the future. Because that's something about me, at least, is I don't think I've ever really analyzed myself in grief before. I don't think I've ever really reflected on it. Do you know, Amanda? Like, I mean, I know you're in it right now.
Well, I mean, when my dad passed away, the first thing, and I think I talked about this on an episode before, but when he passed away, my husband asked me, what do I need? What do I need? And I said, call my friends. And because I wanted all of my friends to come over and insulate me, kind of like not quite a dog pile, but not far from it either, because I wanted them to be physically there, because I needed it, because I felt like I was like falling apart. And if they could surround me, maybe I wouldn't fall apart, And I definitely did the same thing when it was, and it was so crazy too, because I had more of a reaction, or more of that like kind of initial shock reaction when she got sick. About 5 weeks before she passed away, because I didn't know if she was going to make it the week, and and my husband was out of town, and Heather was out of town.
Yeah, it was a crazy timing.
Yeah, but that's what I wanted. I wanted people to surround me, and so it was really hard, because the people, who are closest to me, were not physically there. So that really was such a challenge. But I think, when she passed this time, it was weird, because I had Joe, and that was really comforting, because he was in it too, and we had each other. But honestly, I mean, what was really interesting about her death that I'd never experienced in my life is how, like, after the initial, like, probably about 2 hours after she died, because when she died, I was very at peace. I was so at peace that I did not even cry, like, the moment she took her last breath, because I could feel her spirit fill the room, and she was so happy, she was so happy and so at peace. So, And that's all a mama wants for her baby, you know?
Oh,
so,
totally.
You know, and so, you know, I was good. But then 2 hours later, I went like real dark. Like I was like, oh my God. And I told Heather when I finally called her that morning, I said, you need to watch me because I don't know how I'm going to get through this. But fortunately, you know, I kind of got out of that. But I didn't have the same sort of like, let's have a bunch of people over. I actually just kind of wanted to be alone with my husband, you know?
Yeah.
So it is interesting because like every single, sorry, honeys, I'm like getting very emotional throughout the episode. So please forgive my shaky voice, but it is, I mean, it is exactly what we're talking about, how every experience is different. It's different because of the relationship you had with the person. It's different because of the time that it's happened. It's different because of the way it's happening. It's different because you're in a different place in your life. And there's all these factors, you know, that come into play. But I will say that, you know, my response from you guys was so great. It was so perfect, you know, because, you know, Heather, like she played it real cool. She's like, should I come over? Like, you know, she really left the ball in my court. And the next morning after, you know, I woke up and I was like, okay, I need to get out of here and I want to see Heather. You know, like I want to go walk with Heather. And like, but I didn't want to text her, you know, because like I knew she'd probably be working. And so I actually didn't want to bother her, which like, she's like, bitch, bother me, you know, like you're not bothering me. Like, but like, just, you know, so like, you know, all of her, you know, words of encouragement were just so good because like, she knows how I feel. And we believe all the same things about, you know, what, like how we come into this world, how we leave this world, you know, what all of this really means, what it looks like. And so she was really able to talk to me from that perspective. And I was so glad because some of the things that she said that day were so valuable in this experience because it's allowed me to, I feel like, accept certain truths, you know, maybe sooner than if it hadn't been said to me in that particular way, you know? And then Chelsea, you know, like she called me, but I didn't answer because I was like, I can't talk to Chelsea. Like I can't talk.
The phone's hard.
That's because you know Chelsea was gonna cry.
I know.
Want to cry in that moment. You're like, can't deal with it.
But I did get to talk to her and we had a beautiful conversation. And Chelsea was concerned because she did cry. You guys know this. Of course she cried. Of course she cried. But she also cried because she loves Lonnie and she's grieving Lonnie too. And I remember her saying like, oh my God, I'm such a bad friend because, you know, like I'm crying over Lonnie or you said something like that. And I was thinking
selfish.
Like,
I felt
yeah, that's what you said. You said, yeah, oh, this is so selfish. And I was like, no, are you kidding? Like it warms my heart that you're sad for the same reason that I'm sad. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not happy that you're sad, obviously, but like it makes, because I think that's the biggest thing for me that I really needed at this time was acknowledgement of the loss, you know?
Yes.
And like, and yeah, I mean, and in different ways, but like to really, cause here's the other thing too, is like, she was a dog too, you know, and a lot of people don't realize how close that kind of relationship can be. And so if she had been my human daughter, I know I would have gotten a different response from most people. But because she was my canine daughter, you know, like it was a little less, I think, you know, but for the people who really acknowledged, you know, the relationship that I had with her, you know, was the most comforting to me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, the thing that I've learned about grief too is that someone's response to your grief is really only, they're really only capable of responding to you to the depth of their own understanding.
Yeah.
Of whatever you have lost, of whatever you've experienced, because I have lost a human child and I can tell you that not everybody responds that way, even for that. And not everyone you love responds that way, even for that. And I had someone in my family after I lost Tyler, months after I lost Tyler, get angry with me for still having a hard time with babies and tell me it was terrible, really, really hurtful, like terrible words. And, get over yourself. Stop making this about you. Oh, okay, cool. That's what I'm doing. And like so hurtful. And then, and this person didn't have children. And this person had never really lost anyone and didn't have children. And then they had children.
Oh man.
And one of the first conversations that I had with her after she had her daughter was for her to apologize to me all over again. And her husband to apologize to me all over again for that incident that had happened months prior, because now they get it. Those were their words, because now we get it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think I wish that she could. There's a part of me that's like, yeah, but human empathy, that's a thing to work on that, to a level, right? But really, what can we offer when we don't understand?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and sometimes like that kind of quiet empathy, sometimes that is exactly right. Sometimes that's exactly what we need, is even if we can't fully understand what our grieving friend is going through, like specifically, you can show empathy without having experienced it yourself.
Yes.
Absolutely. And, even just putting a little effort into sharing the feeling that your friend is experiencing, like it makes it real for you as soon as you're open to it, and then it becomes the two of you holding this really heavy, hard, feeling, but you're not alone. And I don't know. I know that empathy is scary and it's sometimes a struggle for some people, because, you have to dig down deep and you do have to feel it, and it's uncomfortable to feel grief on purpose or to share it deliberately with someone. But that is what love looks like on a lot of times. Like with my sister, when right after, when Matt was really sick and then right after he passed away, there were just a lot of days and nights where we would be in the same room and not talking to each other or making eye contact, but sitting right next to each other, or just doing like menial tasks side by side without like discussing anything, but just physically being in this presence of, or feeling this presence of like just heaviness, right? And but that's all it is just empathy, and our friends deserve that, even if it hurts us, even if it makes us cry and have a lot of boogers and stuff,
I had a friend who'd reached out to me and was talking to me, and she said to me, Amanda, I haven't lost anybody like you. And so I feel really ill-equipped right now to encourage you and support you because I haven't been through it. But the thing is like, but she was trying, you know what I mean? And that's what it really was. And I remember Brene Brown was talking about, I don't remember, I think it was an interview maybe with probably Marie Forleo or something, about empathy and how, a lot of times we feel like we have to have gone through the exact same thing to really be able to truly empathize with them. But that's not, at all the case. So it's like, maybe I haven't lost a child, but I know what loss feels like.
Yeah.
Maybe, I haven't experienced infidelity, but I know what betrayal feels like.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, so it's really just the emotion and tapping into the emotion to the depth that you have the capability.
Or even just knowing what love feels like what you were talking about earlier when, those first few days with Lonnie, when you thought she was dead and you were trying to wake her up or whatever, like that was you experiencing the hypothetical loss of love, and I think anyone who has experienced love, grief and loss, I mean, it's the opposite of it. So yeah, absolutely.
So what have you guys learned the most in supporting friends who are grieving?
What have I learned the most? Oh my God, I've learned so many lessons. I don't know if I could even boil it down to one thing, because I've learned about I've learned about how to support other people, but I've also learned a lot about myself. And like Chelsea was talking about how, sometimes when it's uncomfortable to sit with somebody in their stuff. And I used to think I couldn't do it. I used to think that I wasn't capable.
Really?
Or maybe I told myself I wasn't capable because I didn't want to feel it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But either way, I've learned that I'm capable of a lot more than I thought in terms of like how far I can go emotionally with someone else. And I've learned that shared pain isn't double the pain, like you said, Chelsea, like with you two sharing it.
Oh, that's a beautiful, yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful phrase.
I mean, really sharing it kind of cuts it in half. It doesn't make it weigh anymore. And it does mean so much to the person who's really carrying it. It's the acknowledgement,
Exactly.
like Amanda said. And I do think that I do think empathy is a skill that we have to cultivate
and practice.
Yeah.
Right. Like a muscle,
Absolutely.
to work. Because the longer I do it, the better I feel like I get at it. And, I don't ever say to myself anymore that I'm not capable or I can't do that. Even when I don't think I have anything left, we just are more capable than we know of showing up for somebody. Like Amanda, when Lonnie was sick, she was sick for several weeks, which means that Amanda was emotionally just ragged for weeks, right? Because you just never know if this is the moment. And that was you supporting Lonnie in grief, right? And so you had to show up. You kept saying, like, I don't know how I'm here right now. I don't know what my body is doing. How am I showing up? How am I awake?
God, seriously.
How am I functioning? And I just remember like kind of laughing because I'm like, this is your body outperforming your mind.
Yeah.
We are just more capable than we know when it's about showing up for somebody else.
Yeah. Gosh, and there's something just beautiful deep down inside that right there. Like what we're capable of on behalf of our love for others. Like that's, I don't know. It's just lovely. Oh, what about you, Amanda? What have you learned?
I think that I've learned even more now how unique each grieving period is for each person. And so it is kind of a landmine. You don't know really how to navigate it. And that's okay, because I think there's just some staples that are always going to be true. And I think some of those are, that to show up, in the best way that you can, as much as they'll let you, as much as they need you to. And, I also think obviously what we were talking about, the acknowledgement, I think that's huge, huge, like however, because like here's like something that, kind of bothered me is like only getting a text message, back, from a friend was kind of like, felt a little, I don't know, it just fell flat, like not like I'm expecting.
Right. It's not quite as warm or
it's not
personal.
very personal. It's not extremely personal, if that's it, if that's the initial response and then there's more later, but I just feel like, I don't know, a text message is, maybe not the best, like,
yeah, I mean, it's better than nothing for sure.
Source.
But
it is definitely better than nothing. But, I mean, being able to acknowledge it, especially like in the way that you guys have a relationship. So if you guys are people who you talk on the phone or you get together, being able to acknowledge it in the way that you interact with that person is probably the best. So maybe in some, in the circumstances, text messages, it is perfect. So I shouldn't say no text messages, but
you're talking about people. I mean, that already though. So you're talking about people who you do have, a more intimate relationship with, and
Exactly.
For grief. Yeah.
And I think the last thing, which is probably the most important of all the things, if you screw up all the other things, like this is the one thing, don't screw this one up. And that's, don't forget about what happened, and don't forget about the person or pet or thing that was lost. I think, it's very easy to support someone in grief within the first week or two that it's happened. But then what happens 3 months later or 6 months later? Because we all know grief is funny, like you could be doing good, the month after, the 2 months after, but maybe it's 3 months after when you're really struggling. And that's not to say that, you have to keep up with them all the time. But I think periodically asking how they're doing with it. And it's weird. Like, it's even weird for me. Like, I have a friend who, lost somebody very tragically last year. And there's so many times I want to tell her, like, I think of the person you lost every single day. Like, I have not forgotten about this person, but like, I also kind of feel uncomfortable telling her that because I don't want to like bring it up and make it sad,
Well, and I think I think a lot of people probably have that same dilemma sometimes, like, oh, I did with Heather. I did when when you and I first met, and I wanted to ask you about Tyler or bring him up, but I never really knew, so it's kind of tricky.
So the thing is that person is sad anyway. You aren't making their life any harder. Their life is already hard from the loss. And I think we like I'm going to be a little bit rough on us for a second and just point blank say, like, you thinking you've just made their life harder in the middle of a terrible loss because you brought it up is like a little bit like egotistical. You know what I'm saying? They've already experienced this deep loss. Like, that's still a thing for them. Really, you bringing it up or not bringing it up doesn't make it less painful for them. That's still their life. And so, like Amanda's saying, it is easy to get caught up in, I don't want to make it worse. I don't want to inflict pain on somebody I care about. But really what matters more than that is that when you do bring it up and acknowledge it, and that they haven't forgotten, that means so much. That means so much to know that the rest of the world hasn't forgotten, because the hardest part of grief is the after. It is when everybody first comes together with you, that's great. And then they all go home and they go back to their lives because their lives are not changed. And so it is easy to kind of forget and move on if you're not the person who lost something. So if somebody comes to me and is like, and they remind me, that means so much because they don't have to remember. Right. It's easy for them to forget. So they are actively choosing to think of me and how changed my situation is now. And that means the world. So it is easy to get caught up in that though and go, I don't want to bring it up. I don't want to make it worse. But really, you really are doing the opposite. And also you can't make it worse by like the loss has already happened to them.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show, like that's the thing is like when we're not grieving ourselves, it's hard to remember, how to support someone because we almost kind of forget, how we need to be supported.
And I think there's part of us that kind of tries to forget, our seasons of grief as we move on. I think we sort of try to forget some of the details of those things because they were painful. But it is. And you know what? Our culture doesn't do a really fantastic job of giving us good models or good modeling just in general, because we are an individualistic culture. So as opposed to like collective cultures where family all lives all in the same house, multiple generations or nearby or whatever, we're not quite as like close or tribal as some other cultures. And so we're sort of conditioned to process emotional things independent of like of a group or a family or tribe. And so, I think sometimes we can kind of get confused by that a little bit, but it's not an excuse for us to not show up or acknowledge or remember, because those things, as much as we're aware of them, that's really all you can do, right? As far as support.
Yeah. So guys, to wrap up, do you want to leave the honeys with anything?
Yeah, well, I would say that I'm really proud of you for listening to this episode. Whoever's listening right now is listening because they actually care about and want to help support friends in their grief and their sadness and their loss. And that is amazing and already the mark of a great friend. And even if even if you're listening and you're like, oh, but I want to have a friendship like that someday. I mean, you're kind of already on the right track because you're already thinking about how can I really show up for people when it feels uncomfortable for me and when I don't always know what to say. And that's just really cool and really beautiful. So I'm just really glad that whoever's listening is listening. I just think that's awesome. It's not something that I probably ever put any forethought into. In terms of friendship, I probably would have thought of it in terms of if I were the grieving one, what would I want? But I don't know that I would ever have put forethought into how can I show up better for somebody else. And so I'm so glad we're doing that now. I think this is awesome. So I just really appreciate the listener.
Yeah, I'm very proud of you guys listening as well. That's really, it is a big thing to do anything intentionally to care for others. And I think the only thing I would maybe add is to don't be afraid to feel it with them. Don't be afraid to go into that place. I like to call it the mud. I like to call it getting down into the mud with my friend, meaning I'm deliberately and willingly gonna go get dirty and mucky and sticky in a place that's uncomfortable, maybe, but it's a place where we're together. And I want to go into that with the intention to stay in that mud for as long as they will allow me to with them. So I would encourage you not to be afraid to get in the mud with your friends. And if you can't get in the mud, do the next best thing, which is acknowledging the mud. Because the mud matters. It's there and it's messy and it's all over the place, regardless if we're pointing it out or acknowledging it. And don't let your friend be alone in it,
I think the biggest thing is really what I say in every episode, which is that show up with love. And if you show up with love, whatever that looks like, then, you can't get it wrong. And as long as we love our friends, we're always going to be able to support them however they need. We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Raw Honeys podcast. If so, please share it with a friend or post a review. Heather, Chelsea, and I would love to connect with you. Check us out on Instagram at the Raw Honeys or join our community of honeys on Facebook. Thanks for listening. We wish you nothing but big love.